I want to spend a few moments this afternoon just with my own personal reflections of what we've heard today, and reminding us all that today is about starting a discussion with what I'd like to say is an agenda for some action as we go forward when we leave here today. And I think I rewrote my comments about 10 different times because many times I've been invited to come and speak at women's events and talk about kind of my own story and where did the path take me, etc. And that's where I started. I said, oh yeah, I got that story because I tell that story, and I love telling that story because I've been really privileged to have some amazing opportunities in my life. But then as I listened to the stories this morning and I heard what was on people's minds, I rewrote again and I said, all right, I think what I want to do this afternoon is I want to take us to that next level of what I heard everybody saying. We know about the skills, we heard about the skills, and we can build those skills, right? But it's how we use those skills and how do we get the visibility. And I wanted to spend a little time focusing on visibility, how to get recognized and what's the perception of when we have the opportunity to be recognized. What do we do with it? How do we capture it? How do we seize that moment? But before I do that, I do have to share that Lieutenant Governor and I have quite a lot in common. Actually, I'm very proud of that because the story she told today is very similar to my own story as focus and commitment. And when I was a youngster, when I was 9 years old, and I remember I told my mother this, and I'm very proud. My mother's here with me today, Victoria Andresen. Give a wave, Mom. And I'm equally proud because I have 3 generations in the room today because my daughter is here also, Caitlin. But when I was 9 years old, I said to my mom one day, I said, I want to be a lawyer. Now, we didn't have anybody in the family who was ever a lawyer, and we really didn't have anybody who made it through college. So this was kind of a pretty big thing. And I didn't know why. There was something about being a lawyer, and my mother said to me, it's because you love to talk, Michele. Okay. But I will say, so I got fixated, and literally from when I was 9 years old, I said, all right, I got to go to high school, to go to college, to go to law school. I got to pass that bar exam, and I'm a horrible test taker, okay? And I got to do it, and I stayed focused on that. And Lieutenant Governor and I share that because what happened from there is, we both had this vision of becoming a lawyer. And for me, I wanted to become a lawyer because someday my goal was to be a judge. That's what I had my sights set on. Well, wow, I can't be any more off that career path right now if I wanted to be. You know what? I'd have it no other way. And as she shared this morning, and as I know from my own personal life, the opportunities that present themselves, you need to be ready for them when they come. Because ladies, I will tell you, there are opportunities every day for you, but it's all about it being the right opportunity at the right time in your life, and you just need to be ready for it. So when that opportunity presents itself for all of us, when we get the visibility that we've worked so hard because we were educated, because we're smart, because we're driven, because we're focused, right? But what do we do? So let me share a few observations. It is fine, in fact, it is encouraged to be proactive, but as we all know, let's not be too aggressive. What happens when women are perceived to be aggressive, right? We balance that all the time as women, okay? But proactivity is significant. You need to put yourself in the environment and around the people that you need to be around, the people who you want to recognize you, the people who you want to network with. So as a young lawyer, for me, I had to make rain, right? That's what lawyers do. You got to go out, you got to get clients. So for me, my background in the law was employment law. So I had to be places where business people were. And I had to form relationships, but I had to be in that room with them. And I couldn't just be with them in one room. I had to find out where are the other rooms that they are at. And so I had to strategically think about, what associations and affiliations and what nonprofit boards did I need to get on, right? And what clubs did I need to join and what circles did I need to be in so that I could build that relationship. And very funny story for me is as a young lawyer at my very first law firm, I went up to my senior partner one day who was an elder statesman, and I said to him, I got to get out there because you all expect me to, to bring clients in and make money. And I said, so I'd like to go out and get involved in the community with your support, and I think we should do a little marketing for the law firm. Now, the law firm that I belonged to was a 100-year-old law firm in Trenton, extremely conservative, okay? And so the senior partner looked at me and he said, well, Michele, what do you think? You think you just go ask for the business? So I kind of, I paused for a moment, collected my thoughts, and I said, Well, Harry, you know what? If you ask the right way, yes, I think you do ask for the business, okay? And that has been my mantra as I've gone through life. And I'll tell you some ways how I asked for the business, right? I went out there, I got involved in organizations. My regional chamber of commerce, if I had to pick one affiliation in my life that was pinnacle to opening new opportunities to me, it was my regional chamber of commerce. I got involved in the chamber, and I got involved in some committee work, and I rose to be the chair of the education committee, of course, because I'm very passionate about education, and the membership committee. And one day I said, you know what, I was in rooms and I got to meet people who were on the board of directors. And for our region, this was Central Jersey. It was then the Mercer County Chamber of Commerce, okay? But there were like 50 movers and shakers in Central Jersey who sat on that board, and I said, you know what, I got to get on that board. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to the chairman at the time of the board, and I told him I was interested in getting on the board, and I told him why I thought I deserved to be on the board. And he called me, and the next round, when they interviewed people to come on the board, I was considered. Now, that was a pretty big deal for me to sit and pen that letter. But I found my confidence, right? We need our confidence. And the reason why I had confidence is because I worked for it. I earned it. I spent my time around the organization. I chaired some committees. I knew it was my turn. And so I put myself out there. But again, I did it in a more proactive way. I wouldn't suggest that I was aggressive in the manner of doing it. I would say those connections at the chamber also afforded me another tremendous opportunity in my life. And actually, it was the one that veered me off my career path, because now while I was on the board of the chamber, I was co-chairing with the then CEO of AAA. We were chairing the membership committee together. And so one day he and I are in a committee meeting, and we finish up, and he asked me if I have some time to talk afterward. And I thought he was going to pitch me for some legal advice, because sometimes he'd do that, because my background was employment law. And Don was his name, so Don and I are talking. This was actually January 2nd. It was my twin's birthday. It was January 2nd, and it was the year 2000, because it was just the turn of the century. So this was all very, very fresh to me. And at that point in time, I was questioning my own career path, because the law firm I was at, a partner had left, and I wasn't real comfortable in my relationship. So Don says to me this day, he's telling me about how AAA is going this new direction, and how the Federation of Clubs across the country are going to start to collapse, and there's going to be big AAAs, and he needs some really dynamic people on his executive team. And he needs someone who really understands employee relations, because that's what it's going to be all about. You know, the culture of the organizations as we go through mergers. Now, you have all had this experience, right? So I'm sitting across from this gentleman, and he's talking to me, and he's talking about someone with my skills on his executive team. And all of a sudden, it's dawning on me that he's offering me a job. Now, remember, lawyer, okay? I went to college to go to law school to become a lawyer. So I'm sitting there like, out-of-body experience. Now he's talking, and all I'm seeing is like his lips are moving, right? And my head in the back, I'm going, holy shit, I think this guy's offering me a job, right? And immediately I'm going to, but I'd never leave private practice. Why would I ever do that, right? Okay, so, you know, move the story forward very quickly. I go home that night, and, you know, I'm saying to my husband, I'm like, ask me how my day was, ask me how my day was. And I explain all this to him, and he's looking at me, and I said, but Neil, why would I ever leave private practice? And he kind of gave me like a V8 moment. It was like, duh, Michele, this is a tremendous opportunity. Now, see that? Opportunities present themselves when you just don't know that they're coming, okay? If I wouldn't have taken advantage of that opportunity, and I did, I took the dive and I went. If I wouldn't have taken advantage of that opportunity, I wouldn't have had other opportunities that came well after that. That chamber presented another opportunity for me, okay? Another addition in my career and in my, for my resume that really helped me to broaden and be more the person I am today. And it was through relationships on that Chamber of Commerce that I was invited to be on the board of directors of the then Roma Bank, okay? Now, we talk about women getting on boards. Well, let me tell you, there aren't a lot of women on a lot of bank boards, and we have bankers in the room, okay, and we can all nod our head and know that that is true. Now, very funny, because when at this point, I was at the Chamber of Commerce. I was the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. That was another career move along my way. But I called up the chair of my board, and I said, you know, I was invited to be on the board of Roma Bank, and I would never want this to be perceived as a conflict, because as a chamber president, then that was the position I was holding, as a chamber president, you present all of your members equally and fairly. So they all kept assuming that I was invited to be on an advisory board. And for those of you that might understand, or let me explain to you, in the bank world, there's an advisory board, which are pretty much, you know, just community folks, not to belittle the advisory board, it's significantly important. They're like the relationship builders who go out in the community and they bring in the clients, okay? But the fiduciary board is the corporate board, okay? So they're all thinking I got invited to the advisory board because I know how to make relationships, and I had to keep correcting them and said, no, 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 no. I was asked to be on the corporate board, okay? So as we heard this morning, sometimes there's this perception of when you're even invited into the room, what table are you being sent to as the woman in the room, okay? And now just to take that part of my life forward, because of that tremendous opportunity, I will tell you, I went on the board. I was the youngest on the board. We turned the entire board over in 6 years. And in that 6th year, I was the chairman of the board of Roma Bank, and I was very, very proud of that. And I was the only woman on the board, and I was the chairman of the board. And then, of course, you know, times change and the world of mergers and acquisitions comes along, and I'm very proud to say that today I am a member of the board of directors of Investors Bank, and we have many of our investors colleagues in the room today. So thank you, ladies, for what you do for the bank. And ladies in the banking industry who are in the room today in finance, thank you, because I know what you do on the front lines of the finance industry every day. Wall Street, Candace, the movie, okay? I see it from the perch I sit at, sitting on the bank side. It's tremendous, and it is much of a man's world, and you women are doing a dynamic job. So this comes back to be proactive, put yourself in the environment you want to be in. You will be recognized, but be ready when that opportunity comes, okay? You got to be ready. How do you ready yourself? What's your perception? Always act with a sense of passion and urgency. My staff knows this. I say this every day, right? Passion and urgency. I want to give you two quick examples about passion and urgency. Believe in what you do. Never compromise your principles. And let me tell you, if you try to fake being passionate for something, you will get called out. You will get called out. So how do you get recognized? Because people want to align themselves with people who are excited and passionate about something. They want you on their team because they want you out there being the cheerleader. So if you can exude that passion, right, you're going to get recognized. Sense of urgency. An example I'll give you on this is while I was at DEP, I was the deputy commissioner for DEP. That's the last position I held before coming to BIA last year. And for 2 years, I was responsible for numerous Sandy rebuilding programs. Now, being at DEP post-Sandy, I'm looking at my colleague, Marilyn Lennon. Let me tell you, Marilyn and I spent the night of Sandy together at my house. Marilyn was evacuated from Seaside. She came and stayed at our house in the pitch black. And, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning, we were heading back to DEP to do the business of the state in a post-Sandy world. And man, oh man, that's some work, right? But now think about this. 2 years post-Sandy, when you're a bureaucrat in Trenton, it's really easy to forget that half the shore still isn't rebuilt. If you're up here in North Jersey, it's pretty hard to get the feel that if you still go down to the shore today, there are entire regions of the shoreline that are still empty and not rebuilt. Okay? Sense of urgency. My responsibility as a deputy commissioner overseeing programs that were part of getting people back into their homes and safe. About every 5 weeks, I would drag my husband, poor Neil comes everywhere with me, right? Okay, I dragged my husband, Neil, I said, come on, today's the infrastructure tour. He goes, I know, Michelle, it's the infrastructure tour. We'd get in the car, we live in Robbinsville, we'd go to the top of Route 35, and we'd drive all the way down to Island Beach State Park. And we'd get out and we'd walk on the beach and we'd see what's going on. Okay. What that did for me, I went back to Trenton on Monday. The sense of urgency was rebuilt because I know even 2 years post-Sandy, there were people who still weren't back in their home. Always keep a sense of urgency. Get yourself to be those boots on the ground to know what's going on that impacts the people you work with. That's what's going to get you recognized. Passion, sense of urgency. Don't be afraid to put yourself in a man's world. Another favorite story of mine is, I talked about building those relationships. So I belong to this little private club that now doesn't exist anymore called the Trenton Club in Trenton. Okay, for those of you who've been in and around Trenton, you might know the Trenton Club. It's a quiet little club down West State Street, an all-male club that was over 100 years old. Senior partner at my very first law firm brings me there for an event. And I don't know at that point that it's really just very much a male's club. And I'm brought to this lovely dinner. It was very nice. But the entire room was men. And I was the only woman in the room. And I wouldn't even say slightly intimidated, extremely intimidated. Now this was like an annual kind of barbecue type of lunch dinner that they do. So they had a tradition there of once dinner got served, they would tell jokes. Now, everybody, the manager of the club comes up to me and says, well, Michelle, I think everybody knows you're here today, but we need to make sure that everybody knows there's a woman in the room. So we're going to invite you to tell the first joke. Caitlin, does mom know how to tell jokes? No. Okay. Panic sets in. I mean, sheer panic. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Now, the senior manager, the senior partner in my law firm who brought me there, Mr. Backus, and to this day, God rest his soul, I would call him Mr. Backus. That's my respect for that senior partner, right? 2 days before that dinner, Mr. Backus and I had a discussion about the difference between relegating and delegating, and how in life you can only relegate, in his opinion, you would relegate to people who are your peers, and you delegate down. So you can never delegate to a peer or a superior. You can only relegate across, you delegate down. Now, take us back to this dinner at the Trenton Club. Sheer panic sets in, the spotlight is on me. I'm asked to set the tone for the evening. So I stand up and I said, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you all here this evening. At this time, I would like to relegate to Mr. Backus. I love that story because the whole room was like, wow, that's fun. So that was great. So I got 2 in. You know, I scored points with my senior partner, and I survived that evening when I thought I was going to die, candidly. Couple more things, you know, timing, making your move at the right time. So this is so important in your visibility. You heard a lot about calculated risks earlier today. And calculated risks are really about, you know, stopping and assessing a situation, making sure that, as I keep saying, the right time, the right circumstance, and that everything is kind of lined up. I believe in fate and all the stars aligning. For me, probably the biggest calculated risk that turned out to be the best reward was while I was at the chamber. Again, I was the CEO of the Mercer Regional Chamber, and at that time, this was Central Jersey around Mercer County. I was seeing our companies, our Mercer County companies, bleed right out of the state across to Bucks County because the business climate in New Jersey was extremely challenging. And as a chamber with this great board and all these members, and we sat there and we said, you know, this is a problem. We have to do something about this. How can we be part of the solution? Now, in the chamber world, you have to be very apolitical. You work both sides of the aisle all the time. This is what we do at BIA. We always work with all of our policymakers all the time. But sometimes it's about an issue, and sometimes it's about an issue that is impacting you daily that you need to take a stronger stance than you may have before, right? So I suggested to my board, well, if the right pro-business candidate might come along for governor this next time around, perhaps we might think about getting more involved in that campaign, something we ordinarily wouldn't do as a chamber, right? That pro-business candidate was Governor Christie. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, all his policies were pro-business. So we took a calculated risk. I took a calculated risk, put myself out there, got involved in his policy campaign, through his election, served on his red tape transition team. Obviously, he was elected. Here's where we are today. But I will tell you that the night that I was asked by then now Commissioner Martin, but then back before he was commissioner, at the inauguration ball that we were all at that night, celebrating that this pro-business candidate became our next governor, and we were presenting our agenda for change. You know, the commissioner asked me, are you interested in a job in government? And I said, absolutely not. I am not cut out for government. I am a get-it-done girl. So I can serve this administration on the outside, moving those important policies. You all do the business of the government. The very next morning, the governor signed the first 5 EOs. Those first 5 EOs were all the work we did on the transition team for red tape, and it was all around, you know, cutting red tape for the business climate. And that is what the lieutenant governor does now. And, you know, we made a difference. And I was like, wow. I sat at my desk at the chamber that morning watching the live video stream, and I said, this guy is for real. So 3 months later, when Commissioner Martin called me again and said, Michele, I have an opportunity. I know you said no, but I'd like you to listen. Now remember, you don't know when your next opportunity is coming, right? Be ready for it. Here was my next opportunity. And I knew it. It was staring at me. I said, I got to do this. I got to go do this. And that's when I went and I joined DEP, and I was at DEP for 5.5 years. And I left DEP as the number 2, as the deputy commissioner. And I'm very proud of that. So, you know, what I share with all of you is like what is so important about keeping your opportunities, keeping yourself open for opportunities. Don't get blinded in your journey in life, because you will miss out on things that will bring you in a direction that you might never have dreamed of, but wow, the reward along that way is fabulous. Along the way, just always make sure that, you know, you walk the talk, be honest about what's going on with people, be known as someone who empowers and is collaborative in what you do, bring all those people around with you. And you know what? In the end, you all will be recognized. Many of you in this room have been recognized many, many times over. I know that. I read about you all every day. But something that I think is so important too is when that opportunity for recognition comes, accept it with humility, right? Make it all about the mission that was behind what got you passionate about what you were doing. Just don't make it about yourself directly. Accept it with humility, and it's going to be accepted tremendously. In closing, the last thing I want to share, and this is something I carry with me through my whole career, and while I was at AAA, I was the vice president for employee relations and then the senior legal counsel. We did an exercise, a retreat with our senior team, and we were bringing along a culture of values. We're doing this at BIA right now, our values culture. But I have this value proposition that I live with, and it's, you know, when you work every day, you have to work to the values that mean something to you. So many of your organizations, you have those cultural values, right? If you work to the value, the result comes naturally. Success follows. So you work to the value, success comes naturally. If you get up every day and work just to ring the proverbial bell and get to the success and skip the whole equation on values, you're going to leave a lot of people behind, and it's not going to get you where you want to be. To me, that's the most important thing that I try to keep in mind every day. So I thank you for allowing me to share some of my personal reflections. And now I want to move on to our keynote speaker for the afternoon. And to do that,